So Kevin Durant is 35 right now. He'll turn 36 at the end of this month. And if you just look at his resume on paper, it's one of the most impressive in NBA history. Two-time NBA champion, two-time finals MVP, most valuable player in 2014, 14-time NBA All-Star. The dude's really done it all. But when it comes to like his legacy and how he's going to be remembered, it just feels like something is off.
I mean, ever since leaving OKC, he's bounced around teams. He really doesn't have a home in the NBA. Even those 2 championships, there is an asterisk there. I'm sorry, you joined the 73-win Warriors. Like, that's not your stereotypical championship. And really just judging all the players of the modern era, out of all of them, Kevin Durant, his legacy, it's gonna be just very confusing.
Before we start talking about KD, if you haven't already, make sure to leave this video a like, give us a subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on one of our videos. So this idea kind of came about because I saw an interview that KD gave after the Olympics ended where he talked about as he's seeing the league, you know, kind of get younger and younger, he starts to think more and more about eventually retiring. I mean, he got an up close and personal look at one of the NBA's brightest stars in the NBA playoffs when he played against Anthony Edwards. And I mean, it seemed kind of like jarring at first, like KD talking about retirement, like what's he talking about? But the more you think about it, like he's 36. He probably has like 3, maybe 4 more years in the NBA. I guess it's just weird to think about because like Steph and like LeBron, he's still playing at such a high level. But it got us to thinking like, how is KD gonna be remembered when he eventually retires? Because he's gonna be remembered as one of the greatest players in league history, one of the best scorers of his generation. But his legacy feels incomplete because he's maybe the only all-time great NBA player that doesn't really have a team he can call home.
Well, his legacy is so weird because as a hooper, like a guy that could have 5 Olympic gold medals by the time he retires, he already has 4. Just a plug and play, give him the ball. Any court in the world, I feel like KD could get hoops. And there are some players coming to the league now where he's their favorite player, like Anthony Edwards, favorite player, just because he is so much fun to watch hoop. But at the same time, like you look at, there's still something just missing to that legacy. Obviously, he's gonna go down as one of the best players of all time. No doubt about it. Top 15 undisputed best player of all time, but he's like the only top 15, 20 player that really does not have a home where they can go back home. Like every other top player has that.
Some players have multiple.
Exactly.
Who is that for KD? I mean, he's played for 4 teams. Most people would probably say the first 2 he played for, although if you've polled younger fans, maybe you'd get a few that would say Brooklyn or Phoenix. It's weird to think about, and also it's interesting because a couple of those teams probably don't have the most positive feelings towards KD either. So let's start at the very beginning in Oklahoma City, or I guess in Seattle if you want to push up your glasses a little bit. Look, we already made a video on this era of the Oklahoma City Thunder, specifically the 2012 and the 2016 team. So if you want more like in-depth about those teams, go check out that video. But KD, I mean, he led the Thunder to an incredible amount of success. In 2010, they make the playoffs when basically no one expected them to. They pushed the Lakers to 6. The next year, they're in the conference finals, and the year after that, they're already in the NBA finals. And I know they were a relocation team, not an expansion team, so it's not quite the same. But the fact that they were already in the NBA finals in their 4th year in Oklahoma City is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, Thunder fans are spoiled to this day.
Yeah.
Like you guys were bad for whatever 3-4 years and you can be like, if you weren't here then, like don't celebrate now, like stop it.
Yeah,
like,
no.
But it is crazy, what KD did for that franchise early on. Like sure, you lose to the Heat, but I mean, that was a great Heat team and they were super young. And then of course, the Thunder make the all-time mistake of trading James Harden the next offseason. Next year, they're derailed by injuries. Then in 2014, the year KD won MVP, they followed the Spurs in the conference finals, an all-time Spurs team. 2015, again, they're killed by injuries. This time KD got injured. Russ did all he could, but they don't make the playoffs. And then in 2016, we all know what happens. They're up 3-1. They lose game 5, but then game 6, they're even leading late. And then game 6, Clay goes off. They lose the series in 7. I mean, you're losing to the 73-win Warriors, but you were so close, especially on your home floor. You had a chance. And then KD completely just torpedoes the relationship. He signs with Golden State. I mean, he could have left for any other team.
Yeah.
And it would have hurt. It would have hurt a lot, but there would have been some healing. And I think to this day, that relationship could have been healed. And maybe we're talking about KD, like returning to OKC. With him going to Golden State, the team that won 73 games, the team you just choked a 3-1 lead to, like the biggest villains in the NBA at the time, there's no repairing that relationship.
I don't think so. Maybe in like 20 years eventually. I mean, we talked about this in the video where we talked about KD's return to Oklahoma City, his first game back. Like maybe 20 years down the road, they'd be open to retiring his jersey. But like you said, if he went to any other team, I don't think there's still this lingering resentment. There would be initial resentment and outrage and whatnot because every team hates to lose their star player. No one likes it. It's not fun. But again, if he went to any other team, I don't think that there's still as much resentment to this day. He still gets booed every time he goes back to Oklahoma City, in spite of how good they are all these years later without him. Like, they have one of the best futures in the NBA. And when this 36-year-old dude who hasn't played for their roster in like 8 years comes back, he still gets booed. And I think he's going to keep getting booed. Like, it also doesn't help that in the immediate aftermath of him ditching Oklahoma City for Golden State, their other star, Russell Westbrook, completely doubled down on Oklahoma City. In an offseason where there were a lot of trade rumors, there was like, oh, are the Thunder just going to start it all over? Russ was like, no. He signed a 3-year extension and stayed in Oklahoma City and went right at KD when he came back. Like, fully embraced the city, fully embraced the fan base when they needed it. When their best player left them, Russ was there for them. And it makes KD look even worse in comparison.
Yeah, and those battles with KD were great, but I don't see the relationship getting healed anytime soon. I think 20 years from now, he gets the jersey retired.
I'm not convinced of that.
I think that's fair. Time heals all wounds, in my opinion. He did a lot for the franchise, but I mean, the fact that we even had to debate this for all he did just really shows like how KD is viewed in Oklahoma City.
Also, we forgot to mention, he didn't do this when he was with Oklahoma City, but a couple years later, just completely flamed the organization when he thought he was still logged into his burner account.
Well, he can't win with these cats.
Can't win with Russell Westbrook and Serge Ibaka and Steven Adams. Dude had a really good supporting cast.
I mean, he kind of defended Russ, actually, in those. Like, he was fine with Russ. The other guys, he was just like, you know what, fuck them.
Throw him to the wolves. Now off to the Bay Area, and probably the team and fan base you would say has the best feelings towards KD, although it came at the expense of basically every other fan in the NBA hating him. He dipped from OKC to Golden State to form the super team to end all super teams, and his first year in Golden State, the Warriors were the best team in NBA history. They won 67 games, bulldozed their way through the playoffs, didn't lose a single game on their way to the NBA Finals. The only game they did lose in the Finals was Game 4, thanks to a record-setting performance from the Cavaliers. And I do find it hilarious how Cavs fans at the end of that game were chanting, "Cavs in 7." It's adorable they thought they had a chance.
I mean, I was praying to myself, maybe they can blow a 3-0 lead this time, like that'd be even better.
Made history last year with the 3-1 comeback. Let's do it again. Run it back.
Nah, but KD and the Warriors quickly ended them. He wins his first title. I mean, even then, he didn't really completely have the respect because, I mean, people get on LeBron when he won his title with the Heat. This one felt even faker, but he was a champion. He did have his ring. And then in 2018, the Warriors technically regressed, but like, they really didn't.
They were just pacing themselves.
Yeah, they were just chilling. They're like, we're winning this thing, whatever. They smashed the Spurs and the Pelicans in the first and second round. They get taken to 7 by the Rockets in that conference finals, and they very well could have lost this series if Chris Paul doesn't get injured and if the Rockets don't miss 27 straight threes. But it happens, and then they steamroll the Cavs in the 2018 finals. LeBron did all he could in game 1. J.R. Smith screwed it, and they sweep them. 2019 was a lot more turbulent. I mean, this was KD's contract year, and there was the rumors about New York. And then Draymond Green did not make it easy for him at all this season.
Threw gas on that fire right away, like a month into the season when KD's pissed that he didn't get the ball at the end of the game, and Draymond just goes full nuclear, is like, leave, we don't need you, we won without you. By the way, he completely walked back this statement a couple years later, which is just fucking hysterical. But I mean, honestly, the Warriors, they rolled to the first seed again, and then without KD, beat the Rockets in game 6 on the road, and then swept the Blazers in the conference finals, all without KD when he was out with that calf strain. KD did try to come back in game 5 of the finals, and honestly, he was cooking until he tore his Achilles, and the Warriors would eventually lose to 6 in the Raptors. I mean, barring injuries, I think the Warriors obviously beat the Raptors. I don't think it's close either.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Raptors fans. You guys are passionate, so you might give us some heat, but come on now. now. They might have still won the series just with Clay, like bar KD even being out. And then KD did indeed decide to leave the Warriors that offseason. He landed in Brooklyn with Kyrie, so bad news for Knicks fans, but he still went to the New York area. And you could probably make the strongest argument that Golden State is Kevin Durant's home. I mean, he arrived there, delivered, won 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs, parted ways, and there was no bad blood between the organization or between him. But I mean, it's kind of similar to like LeBron's time in Miami. Like, sure, he came there, won titles, won finals MVPs, was an incredible player there, but it was Dwayne Wade's team. In Golden State, it was Stephen Curry's team, and even more so with Golden State, like their big 3 had already been established. Like, sure, Dwayne Wade, he won that title in 2006, but they weren't getting anywhere near back to a finals if LeBron didn't arrive.
Yeah, they were, what, 2 or 3 years removed from the worst record in the NBA.
Exactly. This Warriors team, if KD never shows up, I know we hear the argument like, oh, they couldn't have beat the Cavs without KD coming. That's bullshit.
Bullshit entirely. They were, what, a minute away.
Right.
Like, and most people say if Draymond doesn't get suspended, they win that series, but oh, they couldn't do it the next year? And I mean, Bob Myers even joked about it at their championship parade in 2018, basically saying like, oh, he's been here from the beginning. Like, even he knew that KD just jumped on the Golden State bandwagon. So like, as much success as KD had in Golden State, that's always going to be Steph Curry's team. Always.
Now on to Brooklyn. Unlike how it was in the Bay, his tenure in Brooklyn was just marred by injuries and just unfortunate circumstances. He missed the entire first season, still recovering from that Achilles injury. And then the 2021 season, that was easily his most successful in Brooklyn. In my opinion, he played the best basketball of his career. Nets won 48 games in the shortened season. KD played just incredible in the 2021 playoffs. I mean, that one game 5 where he dropped 49, 17, and 10 assists. Literally one of the best playoff games of all time.
Played the whole game too.
Yeah, and then the game 7, I mean, it gets brought up so many times. If he isn't a damn size 18, they probably win that series. If Kyrie and James Harden don't go down, they probably win that series, and maybe he wins this championship. Brooklyn and his legacy is entirely different. But I mean, year 3, just a complete disaster, and it's tough for KD because it really wasn't his fault at all.
Yeah, I mean, the Nets only won 44 games, but Kyrie's doing his thing where he's, not showing up for work. James Harden is just sick of all this bullshit. I remember when the Nets traded Harden, everyone was jumping on Harden like, oh, he was somehow wrong for all this, and then slowly but surely it trickled out over the next like couple years or so that maybe the Brooklyn Nets weren't the most well-run organization in the world. But the Nets only win 44 games. They get swept in round 1 by Boston in a series that Durant struggled quite a bit. Durant requested a trade that offseason, but the Nets are like, you still have 4 years left on your contract. You're not going anywhere. And you know what? Like, right when it looked like the Nets were starting to turn it around, they had that 12-game winning streak. They got up to the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference because they started the season off horribly. Right when they were turning it around, Kyrie requests the trade. He gets it to Dallas, and then 3 days later, Durant is off to Phoenix. Like, his run in Brooklyn is just a massive failure. And what's unfortunate is a lot of it was really just stuff out of his control.
Yeah, it's crazy what happened because his legacy could be so different. Like, imagine, oh, Kevin Durant comes back from this Achilles injury, like a historically awful injury, plays the best basketball of his career, wins the first title ever for the Nets. But no, it just didn't end that way. And like, do Brooklyn fans hate Kevin Durant? No, not really, even though he requested a trade and left that way. It's more so just seen as like a wasted opportunity, and then probably just adds on to the depressing history for the Brooklyn Nets.
And then in Phoenix, I mean, up to this point, kind of the same thing with Brooklyn. Been basically a disaster. And again, it's so unfortunate because KD's played really well with Phoenix. I mean, his averages are right around his career averages, but he gets smashed in game 6 against the Nuggets. And then in 2024, thanks to just some horrific roster management, they trade 4 first-round pick swaps and Chris Paul for maybe the worst contract in the league in Bradley Beal. I mean, it seemed like a risk worth taking at the time, but in hindsight, it massively blew up in their faces. And now they don't control their own first-round pick until 2031. And if you look at just the Western Conference, I mean, OKC, Minnesota, Denver, Dallas, all definitively better than Phoenix. And that's before you even get to the Eastern Conference, too.
And this is another thing, kind of just an unfortunate circumstance. circumstance. Like, Kevin Durant is still one of the best players in the league. He's got Devin Booker, another superstar on that roster, but they're not going to get good enough. They're just not going to be able to build the team around them. You talked about the other teams in the Western Conference that are better. You expand the entire league, there's probably 4 or 5 teams in the East that are better, with Boston, New York, Philly, and even Milwaukee, I think, is better. It's tough for Kevin Durant. Like, unless he somehow wins a championship with Phoenix, there's always going to be those question marks. He's really not going to have his home still. I mean, if he wins the title there, they're going to love him forever. They've never won a title, but at the end of his career, I don't think he'll win another title after the 2 he won with the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what his like NBA home is going to be. To me, it's always going to be Oklahoma City, just because, I was first getting into basketball right around the time he was emerging with the Thunder. I mean, to other people to be the Warriors, I'm sure people go back and forth on OKC and Golden State, but one of the great things, honestly, about Kevin Durant is he probably doesn't fucking care at all. I mean, what we've seen from this guy is like, he just loves basketball. He's talked throughout his career about like how all he wants to do is just be the best basketball player possible. And honestly, I kind of respect it. And I think that's what his legacy is going to be when he finally does retire. It's like, he was kind of a wanderer. He never really felt like he could put down roots in any place for too long, but fucking hell was he an incredible basketball player.
And I just love watching a 7-footer pull up from 30, get to the bucket, pull up from mid-range. I'll just remember him as being a pure hooper and just a complete joy to watch.
Hey, maybe his legacy will be that he was the man in charge when PSG finally wins the Champions League.
Okay.
You saw he bought that ownership stake in PSG.
I did not see that.
Yeah, he owns part of PSG now.
Okay.
Maybe he can finally get him to the Champions League.
There you go, KD. End your legacy with that, with a Europe championship.
That's the video, guys. How will you remember KD? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving it a like, as it really does help us out. And while you're here, why not check out some of our other videos as well? And don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.